ready. 2 seconds, Kareem by Leo begin to speak.
Man,
why do you say Big L? Why do you think Big L's a better lyricist?
Memorable. The reason why is because I think he has so many bars and lines that is very that you could just catch and it sticks with you, right? And like he punches back to back to back to back, and it's like so many just memorable lines that you can that you can just remember, like the shit that sticks to your mind. Like I'll give you one example. So when he say you think you nice as me, haha, you's a funny nigga. Like he do shit like that. Like it's like kind of creative. Or you do like you better flee hops, so get your head flown 3 blocks. L be keeping rappers all pumping like speed, but like shit like that. So it just, he got a lot of shit that is just memorable, and the clarity, how his style, like the way he just put shit together is just like, you never seen it before. Like you never seen somebody do that before. Like the way, like how clever he puts his lyrics and just his bars and just the songs, like you just, and the swagger and the braggadocious type of like behavior that he displays on beats. You just never seen it. Like you just never seen something like that before. Even right now, you don't see it. Like it's 2021, and you still have yet to see somebody do that. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not taking nothing away from nobody else, but L is just something. L was a gem, man. He was a gem in hip hop, and you know, rest in peace to him, because we didn't really get to see his full potential. But while he was here, dude, he was somebody that people just I didn't think nobody could touch at the time. So
okay. Yeah. And I want to go to Black Shocker and get his thoughts, because he was doing a little as if he was almost battling you, giving you motions over there.
No. So I like the word memorable, but I don't want to make it seem like Big Pun wasn't memorable. As a matter of fact, the only reason why I'm putting Big L over Pun is because the question is, who is the better MC? Pun had quality music.
Right, he did.
Big L failed to produce quality music. So I would argue that, no, it wasn't bad, but the quality
not I don't want to be music.
There is nothing of Big L. There's nothing of Big L that can ever be played in a club. Not saying that that's the most important thing, because we're talking about MCing, but Big Pun arguably had more memorable songs. You can go into many memorable Big L lines. You don't got a lot of memorable songs. However, technically, you got the enemy. You can name them. Hold on. You can name them because you're a Big L fan. Now you ask the average hip hop fan to name a Big L song or name a Big Pun song. You ain't a player, or I don't want to be a player no more will come to mind before anything Big L.
So he has a commercial song that's over Big L, but you're saying that Big L doesn't have. I mean, this is because those songs aren't in the club. They're memorable because they're hip hop songs.
Exactly, but also the ear for music, like for Big Pun and Fat Joe to redo 187. For them to redo 187 with the two of them and put harder lyricism on. So now
had more help.
Every time they're brought up, it's like, which one is better over a Snoop and Dre classic? It was just a better music ear, and that just goes to the team. Now, the reason Big L is a better MC is because his technical lyricism was 10 times better than Pun. What I mean by technical lyricism, not necessarily the punching. Big Pun got to a multi-pocket, and Big Pun never left the multi-pocket. What made Big L so good is he'd be in the middle of a 3-bar punch, and then he'd speed up out of nowhere. I catch crack on the cassette deck. I'm so ahead of my time, my parents haven't met yet. I run a shotty, quick the body. It's like the way he could switch the flows. But also, I felt like when I listened to Big Pun, I was listening to someone who was doing whatever they could to stay in a rhyme pattern. When I listen to Big L, I hear storytelling.
Right.
I hear about his neighborhood. I hear where he's from. Ebonics is more clever than anything Big Pun ever wrote.
That's a fact.
His mind, his MC lyric mind is just better. Baby, bring me some eggs in the gun.
And not only that, like, to piggyback like off what he's saying, it's just like Bro, everything that L put out, like the big picture, the life of it's just everything that man put out, the life of the lifestyle of the poor and dangerous. Like even the titles from just like the titles of his albums of what he was putting out, like it's like reading a book, right? Like you get the cover first, and its cover's like, yo, that shit hard. Then when you get to the music, it's just like it amplifies the whole entire like title. Like it just amplifies the lifestyle of poor and dangerous.
One second.
Every song supports that on that album. Every song supports that title.
Okay, 1 second. In 2 seconds, Kareem Ali will begin to speak. Listen, I love both of these artists. I've studied both of these guys over and over again. I still listen to them both today. I'm heavily entertained by them both. Big L was ridiculously entertaining. Every time I've worked with kids, he's one of the MCs from that generation that stands out because of his punchlines. But the way I rate MCs, I don't know if I would consider him a better MC than Big Pun. I think both of them have albums that could be considered classic. Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous may be a street classic. The Big Picture was incredible in the early 2000s, and I would like to see how Big L continue. But Capital Punishment is definitely a classic record. Album. I feel like Big Pun is a better MC because I feel like the way he constructs his words is on a slightly higher level. I felt like Big L, some of his stuff was a little more basic and simplistic. He would have premise, setup, punchline all the time. Now, Jacob, to your point, the speeding up was definitely an advancement in flow that people try to use today, or people have advanced upon it. So it was the foundation of that for Big L. But Big Pun, those multis was a continuation of what Cool G Rap innovated. Absolutely. Probably in the 80s, early 90s. I erase your face off the earth and curse your family's children like Amityville to drill the nerves in your cavity feeling. Insanity's building up pavilion and my rebellion, and insanity and the cannon be the anarchy that humanity's dealing. A villain without remorse, I'm willing to out your boss forever and take all the cheddar like child support. The multis, and then he'll set up the punchline and drop it. It's so slick. It's just hard for me to... I think
you see how long that took to get to that? You see how long
it took to get to that? It's the way the words are constructed. It's the lyricality of it. I would have to go with Big Pun. Slangston, I'm going to go to you and see what you have to say, Leviathan. What's going on here? Big L or Big Pun?
Oh, this to me is like the closest comparison, the tightest matchup that I think that we've discussed so far out of the episodes. For me, this is probably the closest one. I think this is because it's such a interesting stylistic comparison, but it's also like you're talking about two MCs whose superpower, they're so proficient at their own personal superpower. So for me, it's very close. To Chakra's point, though, I think he's really onto something in terms of Big L's technicality, is his ability to really construct quality setup. Is strong. So I think that Big L was ahead of his time the way him and a few MCs in that era were. Chino Exhale comes to mind and Razkaz comes to mind. Big L was like an somewhat earlier East Coast kind of Razkaz, even though Razkaz was like a West Coast, East Coast kind of MC. But they're similar in that they were innovating around punchlines in their verses, where they create really quality punchlines and build the rest of the verse around the punchlines. Not too many people were doing that in that way then.
That's a fact.
A lot of people are doing it now. Like, I think Big L would resonate very strong in today's hip hop because of the advent of battle rap. So like that punchline style has a whole entire universe that exists now in the world of battle rap, where before it wasn't as prevalent, and Big L was a trendsetter in that way. And he set things up very clever where he could build around a punchline but still be very charismatic. Big Pun, I don't know. His superpower of just compacting the multis and then adding punchlines into various places was also ahead of his time. So it's almost like you're looking at somebody whose superpower is speed versus somebody whose superpower is power punch. And so it's an interesting comparison. So I personally think that Big L, this might sound weird, but I think Big L was the better MC perhaps, but Big Pun was the better lyricist. in terms of how he was able to construct his technicality in terms of putting words together. It was just like unprecedented. Yeah, and another thing that Big Pun did, and you touched on this, Kareem, was that really there were only two MCs who did this to this level in that era. It was Biggie and Big Pun. They would make commercially valuable records that would play on radio and could play in the club, but they never lessened the level of skill and lyricism that they brought to those records. Like if you listen to I'm a Player, Pun is going off from a bar standpoint. 100%. That was like a pop record in among like Latin communities, but he's going crazy lyrically on that record. So I think he had a better ear, like you said, and also a better team around him where he could construct commercial-esque records with skill embedded. Big Pun was very street. Big L was very street-oriented, very underground-oriented. Even though he had aspirations of taking his skills to a more mainstream platform with the big picture, and then it never got to transition from there, unfortunately. So for me, I'm going to be Christopher Rios' advocate, and I'm going to say that overall, by a margin of like a half of a point, I give it to Pun as the better overall hip hop lyricist. Even though you could argue Big L is a better straightforward MC. Collectively, I say Pun is slightly superior.
Shock, I'm gonna need you to sit your ass down.
I don't know,
you can say overarchingly that Big Pun is the better hip hop lyricist when I heard Big L rip J.
Right. That's what I be
people always bring that up, but that is a very early unevolved version of Jay-Z, though. That was Sean Carter in his lyrical infancy. That was like right after he was like rapping like the Fushnikas.
I would say he was in his prime there because that was around the time he had Reasonable Doubt. So I would say that's the better Jay.
That particular freestyle session happened like really before a lot of the Reasonable Doubt rhymes.
It was in the time period where he was constructing it.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Yeah. He probably wrote Reasonable Doubt. It probably was half finished and just ready to be pressed up and put out.
Here today as what I was when I was born, a black man.
Your racism bounces off me, I'm bulletproof. Your prejudice gets deflected, I'm bulletproof. Your hatred can't penetrate me, I'm bulletproof.